Welcome back. The Congressional Budget Office estimating that President Biden's income-driven repayment plan for student loans will cost $230 billion over the next decade. That's nearly $100 billion more than what the Department of Education has estimated. Joining me right now is the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget President, Maya MacGuineas. Maya, it's great to see you. Thanks very much. And you've talked a lot about the cost of the student loan bailout plan as well. Your reaction?
Yes, we warned when this happened that not only was the plan misdirected in terms of bringing down the cost of higher education, but the costs were going to be astronomical. And remember, the president did all of his student debt forgiveness and the change to this income-driven repayment plan through executive action, not through congressional action. And when he did that, the costs were not only huge, he actually didn't try to offset any of them at a period during inflation where additional costs, additional borrowing will push inflation up. He did not try to offset the costs. And one of the real concerns was that the estimates coming out of the White House about these costs would be significantly lower than they would be in practice. And that's what we're seeing now, that the official scores show $100 billion more than the White House was saying, even more than that if the Supreme Court finds the debt forgiveness not to be viable. Then more students will be in this income-driven repayment plan, and the costs will go up, so they will be twice as much as the White House was estimating. This is the problem when you basically put together estimates on the fly without enough information. They're way off the mark.
Well, the other issue is the fact that when you've got policies that weaken an economy, you really don't have a lot of room for error. So, here we are in a moment in time dealing with this collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. But even before we get to that, we're talking about a budget that has more spending and will lead to more debt. I mean, your takeaways from the president's budget, it would borrow $19 trillion through 2033, increase the debt to GDP ratio to 110% by 2033. You've said it umpteen times, Social Security will go insolvent within a decade if we don't get our arms around this. So what are your thoughts on the president's budget and this debt showdown that is about to take place? Because the Republicans want to see some spending cuts in place, but we got to raise the debt ceiling.
Maria, and you make an excellent point. You make an excellent point on the budget, but also how interdependent all of these different parts of our economy are, and how the story of the mistakes we've been making continue to build up to this really dangerous moment where we are. So just looking back, the low interest rate environment, which we've almost become addicted to, clearly created many problems. We're seeing them now. One of them was that we borrowed more and more and more. And in fact, people are out there saying, look, rates are so low, we should borrow more, which was not the case, because when the government borrows, even at low rates, it still has to repay that money, and it shifts it on to future taxpayers. So now we have a huge amount of debt. It leads to inflation. As interest rates go up to fight inflation, what happens? You see that there is what can be the beginning of real upward pressure on your interest payments. That leads to more debt, and you're in this dangerous cycle where we are right now. So the more the Fed takes action to fight inflation, the more that can damage our overall budget situation. What the president came out with was a budget that really acknowledges there's almost no way to get on top of this problem. It's so large right now. He would have, without his budget, we would have borrowed about $20 trillion over the next decade. He, through some heroic actions, very, very large tax increases, which a lot of people are not going to be willing to go anywhere near, he then brings that down by only $3 trillion. And let me say, in this environment, $3 trillion would be a huge win. It would be great to save that much, but it's not going to get us anywhere close to balance. It's not going to even get us to a point where our debt isn't growing faster than our economy, which is the first step. We have to get there. So through this budget, which has huge tax increases, spends a good deal of the money instead of using all of that to bring the deficit down, makes some changes to improve Medicare, which I give him credit for, but a lot of them is actually diverting funds from one part of the budget to another. And importantly, as you say, does nothing to fix Social Security, a program that will be insolvent in just over a decade, and there will be massive across-the-board benefit cuts if we continue to delay action. This is a budget that really doesn't acknowledge how severe our fiscal problems have become. So I hope we start by going in the direction of reducing the deficit like his budget has asked for, but I think we need to stop the spending and we need to focus on the saving before we do anything else.
But I don't see a willingness to do that. Do you, Maya?
I see good talk from both sides with almost no zone of overlap of what they're willing to do, right? Fiscal responsibility is always easy when it comes to talking points, but the policy changes are going to have to be very significant. And honestly, they're going to have to involve compromise from both sides. So you have the president only talking about huge tax increases. And then on the Republican side, we're talking about big spending savings, which we do need, but we're not going to be able to get to the goal they're talking about of balancing the budget. I wish we could, but it's just not realistic. So they need to come towards each other because they need real savings to get them actually done.
Yeah, and it starts with bad policy, and you started our conversation with the bad policy of the Federal Reserve, these 0% interest rates for 15 years, by the way. I spoke with Thomas Honig earlier in the program. He's the former president of the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank. He was the one dissenter back in 2010 who said, no, I can't vote for this. I can't vote for all this free money. Here's what he said earlier about now where we are with this collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. Watch.
I think it is a bailout. The reason that they're saying, those who are saying it's not a bailout are saying that is because they did not bail out the investors. They failed. They lost their money. However, they bailed out hundreds of billions of dollars, I should say, of uninsured depositors, and that's a bailout.
So layer on top of this bailout, Maya, on top of bad policy where we're facing this debt showdown, and you see how things can unwind pretty quickly. Markets don't react until they react, and then it becomes a cycle of upset.
That has always been the concern about where we are. People will say, at what level does the debt become a problem? There is no one level. The point is that when you're structurally weak, which our economy is now because of the fiscal irresponsibility that we've been practicing for so long, anything can set off the problem. And right now, we are already stuck in a very difficult situation between fighting inflation and avoiding a recession. That tricky balancing act just became so much more difficult. And it's because the underlying structural problems have been weak for years, and yet you have politicians wanting to avoid any of the difficult choices, continuing down that path until you reach the tipping point. And this is one of those moments that could be some sort of a tipping point, and all the policy solutions as a result of previous pad policies really aren't ideal, and that's where we're stuck right now.
Yeah, and by the way, Bloomberg is reporting that Blackstone may be among the investors looking to buy pieces of the Silicon Valley Bank. Bloomberg is reporting that this morning. The FDIC is still having an auction in terms of a larger player acquiring Silicon Valley Bank, despite the emergency measures. You can't secure deposits at all banks, right, Maya?
Yeah, I don't know when this stops, because the whole objective of reassuring everybody now is going to lead to huge promises that are not only bad, you can't keep them, and they would be bad policy in the long run, certainly.
All right, Maya, thanks so much for your leadership on all of this. We're following your work closely. Maya MacGuineas joining us this morning, Committee for a Responsible Budget. Thank you so much.